We're here with Coach Wheatley, post-game 66-10, Grand Valley over Wayne State. Coach, first of all, your thoughts on the game today?
Well, you know, when you run up against a team that's been doing this for a minute, meaning they've had a very long time to get their program together, and they've done a great job of year after year, not rebuilding, but retooling and reloading. It's a well-oiled machine. But yet still, you don't want to have that type of score run up on you. But it just kind of shows me where we need to be and where we need to get to.
Talk about the line of scrimmage today, because I thought that was big early. They ran the ball pretty much right at you in the first quarter and built that big lead. Just talk about maybe that matchup today.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the oldest adage in the book, right? The ball game is won up front, and they are pretty dang on good up front on both sides of the ball. But you talked specifically about offensive line, right? Their offensive line play. They did a great job. They ran their plays. We knew they were going to come out running pin and pull. We knew they were going to do it. We stopped them a few times going outside, but then they found a way and readjusted and started cutting the ball back up inside and getting going. But once again, though, when you talk about this conference, they've set the standard for so long. And offensive line play, defensive line play at every position, I think when you look at your team, you have to retool your team to kind of say, this is who we want to go against, and this is who we have to compete against, and we got to go be combative against that. So they've done a great job of getting that thing together.
Yeah, my next question, kind of going off what you just said earlier about them, they've had a lot of years to build the program to where they're at. They're one of the best teams in the country every year. I know you want to get Wayne State to that point. How do you go about doing that? Not just next week, obviously, but years into the future.
I mean, it takes a little time. It takes a little time. It can't be built overnight. But you take the first steps, and it's no secret by me saying this, but you got to go get guys up front. You got to go get guys that can block their defensive line. You got to get guys that can rush, to be successful against their offensive line and pass rush. So it starts up front.
Quick word about your seniors. I know you've only been around. This is your first year here. Obviously, you've only been with them with 1 year, but talk about being senior day today and your seniors.
Senior day is always an emotional day. Max, who caught a touchdown, emotional. You try and get the ball in some guys' hands and, try and send them out on a good note, right? This was a big game for them, a trophy game, the wooden shoe game. And then for them to go out and, have this type of loss, it doesn't sit well in them. This is a game they'll remember for the rest of their lives, right? Because it was their senior night. But these guys have done a great job of welcoming in this university into this football program and giving me everything that they have. They've done a great job of, facilitating the things I try and want in building this culture and getting it done. They've done a great job with that, and I really appreciate them for it.
I obviously have to put this behind you real quick because next week another tall task, two-time defending national champion Ferris State. It's always interesting. You seem to play Grand Valley and Ferris, two teams we don't like here at Wayne State, back-to-back weeks to end the year. Talk about that game next week and what you need to do to get better.
Yeah, I don't do the scheduling. That was done before I got here. But at the end of the day, really, truthfully, if you want to build a team, and once again, you're going to face another team who's had about 10 to 15 years of building that program, right? Like you say, back-to-back national championships. They had a couple of Harp Trophy winners. So he's done another great job of building that program, right? And for them to go back, for us to play them back-to-back, yeah, it's the blender, man. It is. It's an incredible grind, but it just kind of shows where you need to be, right? It's you can look at this thing one or two ways. You can say, wow, whoa, it's me. A lot of negatives, or you can look at it as the circumstances, both positive and negative. But the negative, right, is basically telling you what we have to do to correct it and where we got to get to be where we need to be. Once again, another tough team with a heck of an offensive and defensive line, right? They are dangerous. They can score from any place on the field with any player on the field, right? So. But once again, you welcome the competition. You got to see where you are in order to get to where you need to be. And that's it.
All right, so now, it's your first year coaching for the team. How well do you think you did as a coach this year?
You're always going to be hard on yourself. You never want to be under 500. Mm-hmm. You never want to be under 500. You're always going to be a little tougher on yourself. But however, to answer the question, I think I really won't know until after the season, and what I mean by that is you got to give yourself a chance to get away from it for a moment and look at the positives,
Yep.
right? Look at the controllables, the things that I could have controlled, assess myself, but you never want to go under 500, right? So, but with that being said, I'm kind of tough on myself, so I don't really think I did a great job this year.
Well, so what are some standout players that really did super, in your opinion, did well this year?
Well, that's kind of always a hard question to say because you never want to leave anyone out. I mean, there are some things that go unnoticed in terms of stat sheets. But I would say Kobe Horn is a guy who I saw grow up a lot. He grew up immensely and matured really well. Jaden Davis had his ups and downs, but he's finishing the season on an upward trend, right? Carl is number 4, he's starting to play. He's coming up. But, Dalen Peaks is a guy who's our Swiss Army knife who can play any position on the back end. He's done an incredible job for us, right? But then you turn around and you come back and you just have a guy who doesn't show up in the stat sheets a lot, but Kane Quinlan is a guy who kind of held it down on the defensive line. He battled, he fought, but just won't show really in the stat sheets, but he fought. I mean, those are guys that you wish you had a lot of them,
Right.
Offensively, you come back, Dion, he's another guy who started to trend upwards towards the end. Early in the season, kind of still tried to find his rhythm, tried to find where he was at, but then he just found himself at the end, right? He's trending upwards. I really like where he's at. Tavion Warren, who's our Swiss Army knife on offense, goes to slot, can play outside, plays in the backfield. He's just made plays when we need him and where he, and he's basically went up and sometimes went far and beyond of the call of duty. And I would just tell this guy right here, John Rava, is one of the most intense players physically and emotionally. He's our emotional leader. He's our power pack now. He's our jump starter. You can hook jumper cables up to him and start your car. So he's one of those guys. And then our quarterbacks. We've rotated and cycled a bunch of quarterbacks through, but those guys have done a great job of staying ready each week and not knowing who was going to be up. And some people are going to say, well, is that an issue? Well, each game, each guy presents a certain will that we will have to push forward to get through to win the game. But I would just say that's another guy that really did a great job for us.
Yeah.
And then Darren King, he's made some big catches for us. Some really big catches for us. Can't leave him out. Like I said, it's just so many guys that it's just kind of hard to leave anyone out.
So what do you think are some things that you guys did really well this game, and what do you think some things that you guys could improve on and following the next game next week? What do you want to work better with?
Well, I think one of the things we did really good was not losing sight and focus. I mean, even though there were some big plays given up, but they still fought. I mean, to go out and have that, at the end, when we said we're going to try and score, they were like, let's go. They didn't stop, and I really like that, and I really appreciate that. The next thing I thought that we did really well was they communicated with one another to get things fixed. It was a lot of times where, coach sometimes would step in, and a lot of the players were able to fix it themselves. And that shows you growth, right? That shows you the immense growth of where we were at the beginning of the season to now. Some of the bad things is just basically doing your job. See a little, see a lot. And what I mean by that is you can't play all 11 positions.
Right.
If you master your domain and master that, and then allow the next guy to master his, then we'll be okay. We were out of spots in certain places. Offensively, our offensive line, the stunts and stuff they was rolling. If you just kind of follow your guy and do what you're supposed to do, they don't get where they need to be, right? So that's offensively, but like I say, they did some good things. The score wouldn't tell it, but they did some pretty good things.
Well, what do you think? What are your goals for next season?
Well, first, got to hit the recruiting trail, right? Got to put first things first.
Yeah.
So we just got to hit the recruiting trail. Like I said before, got to go back and watch the film, really assess myself as a coach, assess the coaches. But then at the end of the day, truthfully, go out and recruit the counter.
Mhm.
What I mean by that is, their defensive line, you have to get an offensive line that can block their defensive line.
Mhm.
Our D-line has to be the team that can penetrate and get by their offensive line. I think skill spot will be okay, we can recruit those deals, but I think because at this time, everybody in the nation is trying to recruit big people, right? So we just gonna have to go out and get the right fit for us. That's my goal for next year.
Mhm. Well, thank you.
No, thank you.
Coach, as always, thanks for your time. We'll get the Dogs next week.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.